Okay, so Be'ezras Hashem, we're continuing with our weekly shir on the Torah of recovery with the light revealed, illuminating the path of recovery with the light of Torah, and illuminating the light of Torah and revealing the pathways of recovery that are inherent within it. And what we're going to be speaking about in this week's parsha, Parshas Bechukosai. In the parsha of Bechukosai, what the Baal HaTanya and all of the tzaddikim of Chabad ultimately focus singularly on is the element of that bechukosai, the word bechukosai, following in my laws, following in my statutes, is rooted to another Hebrew word, which is chakika, a chukas, a chakika, an engraving of sorts. That just as a law is engraved upon the mind of the person following that law or that rule, so too the act of engraving has a unique relationship upon the thing that it is being engraved. And what the Baal HaTanya reveals is that ultimately we can look at our lives in one of two ways. We can look at our lives as the attempt to develop spiritual tools, the attempt to develop and create for ourselves modes of well-being, to create and develop a light that we can live within where we can taste the goodness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's presence. There's the notion that it is up to me and I am responsible to create something that does not exist right now. It's a state of spiritual bliss that I would like to access, and it doesn't exist within me. I have to go out and buy it. I have to go out and create it. I have to go out and work and toil in order to gain possession of that thing which is not really mine. That's the first stance of spiritual work, that there's me who exists devoid of the spiritual light, of calmness and well-being and serenity and all rightness. And there's that thing outside of me that if only I'm good enough and if only I work hard enough in order to gain it, then I can taste and benefit the reward of having gained this good life, this light of experience, this calmness and this faith. So there's me who remains separate from the goodness that I want, but through the work of my actions and the work of my hand, I can bring myself closer and closer to that thing that rests at the end of the journey until eventually perhaps being able to gain possession of it. That's the first model of spiritual development, and it's a fundamental model of spiritual development. But what that model of spiritual development always brings with it is the sense that my relationship with my higher power, my relationship with God, is dependent upon something. It's dependent upon my actions. It's dependent upon how far along the rungs of spiritual growth I can grow, so to come to that place of being able to possess and own this spiritual light that was not part of me before, but I've been meritorious enough to have developed the spiritual currency in order to purchase it. That notion creates a separation between the self, between the individual, and the light of spirituality that they are trying to connect to, which is their connectivity to God and to their higher power, and the light of calmness and faith that comes with it. It's not me. It doesn't exist with me. I don't own it. I don't have rights to it. I go out and I prepare myself to be able to afford it and I buy it, and it's a possession of mine. My spirituality is a possession. It's not something that is inherent within me. It's an externalized object that I have been able to purchase and bring into myself. But there's still an inherent separation between me and the spiritual light of faith that I'm trying to connect to. And what that does is it throws a person, especially a person who doesn't always feel very good about themselves, which is generally often the people who are deepest, the people who feel the broken heart, the people who are aware of the difficulty of it all and the infinite gradations of what it means to develop the self, because we're never finished. We're always connecting to something which is always far beyond ourselves. We're always coming closer, more approximate to the ability of saying, I grasp HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but in the end of the day, what we're forced to always come back to is the recognition that what I thought I grasped in wholeness was revealed to be deficient in relationship to something that's more whole, a new level of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's revelation, which is the secret of recovery, which is wholeness through limitation, specifically by recognizing that it's in the quest that I'm going to come closest to Hashem rather than the attempt to satisfy my desire for Hashem, which will never come about, that I learned to stop running so much and I learned to be present. But in this mode of spiritual attention, in this way of thinking that keeps me separate from my spiritual goal, I'm always worried at the end of the day. I'm always worried. If I'm a sensitive soul, I'm always worried. I'm aware that I can't reach the goal, so I'm always worried that I'm going to lose it. I'm always worried that I haven't truly bought it. I'm always worried that maybe this is not the real thing. I'm always worried that this is not going to last forever, and therefore I can't really experience the pleasantness and the presentness of it right now. And that it's dependent on me and my behaviors. And if I don't have it, then it's a result of me being bad and the self-judgment and the shame that comes along with that model. And there's another model. That's the first model of spiritual attachment. The example of that would be writing ink on a page. Writing ink on a page. There's a paper and there's ink, and the ink is separate from the paper. And yes, I have the pen in my hand and I have the ability to draw that ink and apply it to the paper. Meaning I'm the paper, I don't have the spiritual light within me, but if I work hard enough, I can learn to write and inscribe the ink of spiritual connectivity into myself. And then there's going to be a unification between the paper and the ink. There will be something written. There's a spiritual grasp, there's a sense of well-being. But in the end of the day, the Baal HaTanya says there's always going to be a separation, an inherent separation between the page and the ink, because the page is the page and the ink is not the ink, and the ink had to be brought from elsewhere in order to be inscribed upon the page. And therefore, in the end of the day, no matter how deeply connected they seem to be, there will always be a sense of their inherent separation. That the spiritual development and the spiritual gifts of calmness and well-being and acceptance and all-rightness that I experience in my life, they're never truly mine because they remain separate from me in the guise of the ink that's written upon the page. That's the first model of spiritual connection. That in spite of the fact that the ink can be written very deeply on the page, there's always a fear of the ink dissipating from the page, of being erased over time. And then there's another path of spiritual experience. Another path of spiritual experience, and like anything, it's both and rather than either or. A person has to understand that these two stages of experience are garments upon one another, both illuminating one another through their opposition. The first model has a benefit that the second model doesn't have, and the first model has a deficiency that the second model doesn't have. So each takes care of each other in creating the unity of both and. I can learn how to develop a paradoxical and almost contradictory way of relating to myself, that on the one hand, I can still have that mindset of that relationship with spirituality that still feels like it's just ink on paper, and that I still have to earn it every second, and that if I let go, I lose it. And at the same time, I can also cultivate an inner sense of the second model of spiritual attachment, which is going to be a far deeper and far more primordial experience of connectivity to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And they're not in contradiction to one another, but rather they enable us to function properly. The second understanding that we're going to describe right now, of a different way of looking at spirituality, is in truth going to be the light that allows me to function in the first model of spirituality in a healthy way. Because devoid of the second light of spirituality, which we'll discuss in a second, which is a new way of writing, referred to as hakika, or engraving, rather than ink on a page, it's an engraving of a whole within a previously whole object. It's that orientation of our spiritual attempts to connect to God through the level of hakika, of engraving, that is going to enable us to function properly in the realm of writing our spirituality, which is where there's an inherent disconnection between the page and the ink, no matter how connected they seem to be. And only with that inner mindset of connection and acceptance that comes from the letters of Hakika, from the engraved letters, will I be able to properly understand and maneuver the written letters of Kesiva. Because without that inner light of the Hakika, of that perpetual engagement, then I'll start to look at the light of Kesiva as that light of a written experience as something that's going to fall apart. But when I'm aware of the second form of spiritual functioning, which is going to be the writing by way of engraving, and I'm always aware of that existing in the inside, in the innermost point of my mind. So then when I enter into the realm of the writing form of spiritual connection, where it's based on my actions and it's based on how I feel and it's based on the goodness of me that I can see in a revealed way, which develops into a conditional relationship, and one that if I'm good, then it's good, but if I'm bad, then God forbid it's bad, which is not an inherent connection. So I'm able to live in that space without losing my mind, because I know deep down that there's a second form of writing, which we're going to explain right now, the osios of Hakika that come from the language of Bechukotei, which are going to represent a far more developed and a far more mature sense of spiritual connection and engagement. Because unlike the first one, which sees the paper and the ink, the self and spiritual light as being separate, the notion of engraving letters is ultimately revealing that the thing that is being written is part and parcel of the thing that it's being written upon. That in truth, the letters already exist within me. The letters are not something that I need to externalize. The letters are not something that I need to go out and buy. The letters are not something that I am able to earn. The letters are in truth a potential state that always exists within me, always already inside of my potential as an individual connected to God. And the only thing necessary to reveal it is not to go out and write those letters, but to move inwards and to erase that which is blocking those letters from being revealed, and to descend down deep into the self to reveal the ever-present nature of those osios that were always already there, even before being written. The act of engraving is a singular act. It's utilizing the stone, which is a blank slate, and then breaking through the stone, through the power of the stone itself, to reveal content, the potential content that always existed within the baseline potentiality of that soul. The engraving is not something that comes from the outside. It is not ink that is now being written upon a foreign body, but rather it is from within the thing itself. It is the radical secret of the uncovering of the enoughness that rests at the fount of the soul that can only be revealed through the utilization of the aspects of the soul itself. That I cannot break free other than by breaking free from the notion that there's anything that I need to do in order to break free. I'm already free. I already have everything I need. I already carry the light within me. I already have an inherent connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to my higher power, that cannot be erased. That cannot be erased no matter what, because it's not something that's written. It's not something foreign. It's an inherent part of the very body of the self itself. Because when it comes to the osios of Kesiva, when it comes to the spiritual gains that I've gained and developed through the contingent and dependent actions of my best self, which leads me to question what's going to happen when I'm not functioning at my best, and that ahava shatali bedavar, and that love that is dependent on something, what happens when those letters get erased? There's a mechika. Those letters can be erased, and they can be completely erased, at least theoretically completely erased. But they can be erased because that ink doesn't inherently belong to the paper. It's something that's added upon the paper, and it creates a unification afterwards. But singularly speaking, it was not unified at the beginning. And therefore, when it gets erased, it does exist a state of that paper without the ink upon it. And so you can have a ksiva when it's a dependent type of spiritual connection. So then there's the thread of a machika, which erases any type of spiritual connectivity whatsoever, to the degree that I might feel as if what had been written has been completely lost, God forbid. But in the place of hakika, in the place of hakika, in the place of engraving, in a place of descending down into the thing itself that doesn't need to express itself externally to an other that can be read, but rather it's a process of engraving, and engraving upon that which was previously whole, to reveal that there is an inherent potential of all that will be revealed afterwards that rests within us at every moment prior to expression. The engraving reveals that which has been always present in a state of potential, and it reveals the ever-present possibility of something coming into being in a real, authentic way that comes from me. It's not earned. It's part of me. I'm an expression of myself. My best self is an expression of what has always existed within me. That's the secret of the hakika, that everything is always okay. It doesn't look like it's okay, so a person has to engrave deeply to uncover the okayness that rests and abides at the center of it all. In the realm of Kasiva, it might not be okay, and only when I write things that are okay, things will be okay. But when it's not written, it's not written. In the Osios of Hakika, in that engraving, there is a revelation of the wholeness that is already present within the self, and all that we need to do is to reveal it. In the realm of Kasiva, in the realm of that separation between self and God, and between self and the sense and my grasp of God, and my grasp of my higher power, and my grasp of all rightness. So then there are times where it's written, and there are times that it's not written. There are times that it can be erased, there are times that it can't be erased. There are times that it grows ugly, and there are times that I have to rewrite it. But in the place of hakika, in that place of the spiritual connection that comes about by engraving, I'm revealing something that has always been there. In ksiva, when it's there, it's present, and when it's not there, it's absent. There is a presence and there is an absence, and the two appear to be separate. In the realm of hakika, in that engraving, there's no presence and absence. There's revelation and concealment, a fundamentally different way of looking at our spiritual connection. In the realm of writing, where I'm separate from the page, so there are times where I have it and there are times where I don't. And because I'm an all or nothing type thinking person, so if I have it, I have it. And if I don't have it, I don't have it. But if I remember that I didn't have it when I feel that I have it, I don't have it then either. And I lose everything because it's dependent and it's contingent. And I begin to question all of my viability to experiencing this thing. But in the realm of hakika, it's not about creating something that is not there. It's about revealing something that has always already been there. It's about revealing the inner presence of all things and the allness that abides within the very core of the individual self, and the secret of Chelek Elokai Mimal Mamish, that hakika, that engraving of a Kadosh Baruch Hu within the very depths of the Jewish self, within that hakika that we engrave upon ourselves. In that place, it's just about revelation. It's about revealing that which has always been present. It was present in a state of concealment. That doesn't mean it wasn't present. And in that realm of hakika, of engraving, a person comes to find the irreducible baseline of all rightness, and the unconditional positive self-regard in between me and my spiritual reality and my higher power, which reveals unconditional positive self-regard in every other area of my life as well, in that place, there's no fear of shichacha. There's no fear of being forgotten because it's engraved. And even though the engraving can grow old, what will always remain is a roishem. There's always going to be an irreducible trace of that original engraving. That's not true by the writing. By the writing can apparently be erased to the degree that appears to be a mechika, an erasure. But specifically by the oisios of Chakika, there will always remain a trace, an irreducible trace. And when I descend down deep into that irreducible trace, I uncover that which has always already been present and that which is always already perpetually present and therefore accessible to me at any moment. From the perspective of the osios HaChakika, from the perspective of the engraving, which is revealing that which has always already been present within myself, simply it needed to be uncovered through the process of uncovering. I come to live a life of perpetual presence in the face of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, of Shavisi Hashem Lenegdi Tamid, of everything is okay. That's the baseline. Then let me go into what is being written afterwards. But the baseline is that everything was okay, even when it doesn't appear okay, because the Rishimos are still there. There was no tzimtzum there. It's a revelation of that which always will be the best parts of ourselves. And that's how Hashem wants to create the world. The Zohar HaKadosh says that the creation of the world is Galif Gilufa, B'tihiru Ilah. HaKadosh Baruch Hu entraced the tracing. He engraved an engraving in the celestial air columns, meaning to say that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wrote, so to speak, existence into reality. He wrote existence into reality, which is what the Safra Ditzniusa speaks about. Hashem engraved himself within the heart of the Jewish people, as the Jewish people engrave him within our hearts. And in that engraving, in that creation of the world, of our inner world, where the light is fundamentally revealed, everything is okay. Everything is okay. It's a chakakya. It's a chakika. It's a revelation of a Kadosh Baruch Hu's presence in our life, as the Sefer Yetzirah points out, as the Zohar Kadosh points out. In the realm of Kasiva, it's yeah or no. It's sometimes I'm there, sometimes I'm not there. And that's important. It's important to mind the process of Kasiva. That's the process of our relationship with the Torah. There's a Torah of Anna Nafshi Ksav Yahavis, the revealed Torah as we understand it, where I'm either connected or I'm not connected. But there's a more primordial element of that source of that Torah, of the Chakika, the Torah of the Chakika, where a Jewish person is always connected to their os. And in that place of that engraving, we learn to develop the deep secret that I am always okay and that I am always connected. This is where nachas comes from. As Rabbi Nachman says in the first teaching of Likutei Maran, that the purpose is for there to be wisdom in the world, and that wisdom to then connect to the heart, and then that heart to engrave itself upon reality. That there's an engraving that takes place. There's a moment of experience that takes place when the mind and the heart are fundamentally connected that are revelatory of the fact that everything is always there, that I am okay, things are okay, I am enough, it is enough, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is enough, everything is enough. And from that place, we can learn to traverse the treacherous territory of the writing and the erasing that we go through in each day. Without the true knowledge that everything that I'm trying to write for myself in my spiritual autobiography is ultimately already engraved within the very recesses of my soul from the unboundless grace and chesed that HaKadosh Baruch Hu sends down to me by very dint of the fact that I'm capable of being aware of myself for even a second in this world. The biggest nace imaginable, the dir b'tachtoin mamish, to reveal Hashem right here, right now. That process is only going to be possible when we fundamentally take for granted the fact that everything I'm trying to write is already written. It's written in osios of chakika, it's written in hidden engraved letters that are not yet visible to the eye. So here, may I come into my life and make visible that which is invisible. But the invisibility of it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It exists by way of invisibility. It's the whole that's engraved into the luchos themselves. Engraving is a process of moving inward. Of chakak, it's a movement inward. It's not searching for affirmation externally. It's digging down deep into the very recesses of self to come to terms with the fact that I am enough. It takes an inner strength. Chakak is the gematria of Yitzchak. It's a chakika, it's a tzimtzum, it's an engraving, it's a breaking down of something that we thought was previously whole and coming to terms with that there's the potential of deficiency that exists within it and the secret of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's ability to reveal himself both in wholeness as well as what appears to be imperfection. And when I attach myself to that wholeness that I will only reveal by way of revealing that I am the potential towards limitation that exists within that wholeness, I am the engraving. Each and every one of us are the engraving within that infinite space where HaKadosh Baruch Hu is drawing our souls out from that hewn stone, from engravings upon engravings, and we're engraving ourselves deeply into the very fabric of reality, into the very fabric of our own lives. That light has the ability to bring a person from one level to the next. When a person believes fundamentally in their inherent goodness and understands that the scribbled nature of their writing doesn't touch the depths of the inherent goodness that a person exists with, so then a person learns to take that second stage of writing with more confidence, with more trust, with more hope, with more directedness, with more of a strength and an ability to stand up and say, I'm good, Baruch Sha'amar v'haya ha'olam. And if I've fallen, it doesn't mean that I'm a broken person. It just means that I have to learn how to erase again and to write again and to erase again and to write again. And that strength comes from the fact that we have an immeasurable depth of spiritual power and spiritual space and confidence that always already exists within us. By dint of the fact that Hashem created us this way, by dint of the fact that Hashem engraved us into reality, we carry within ourselves that or ein soif kaviyachol that is hidden within the Roshem, that is hidden within the irreducible trace that rests at the base of our consciousness. And in that place, we uncover the fact that I am always okay, and that gives me the ability to now become more okay. Not from a fear of not being okay, but from a confidence of I'm okay and I would like to be more okay. And slowly but surely, the light is revealed into our lives, and we learn how to process with more calmness and more with spiritual confidence and directedness, Be'ezras Hashem.